Welcome to the Detroit branch NAACP's Let the Record Reflect. I am your Executive Director, Donnell White, filling in on behalf of our President, Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony. Welcome to another episode of Let the Record Reflect. I'm joined today with our General Counsel, Attorney Melvin Butch Hollowell. Welcome to the show, Butch.
Thank you. It's always great to be with you.
Good. Now, I don't know how we're doing it, Butch, but we're smiling. It's the week after the dinner, the 57th annual Fight for Freedom Fund dinner, and we had a lot of magic moments, some of which we'll talk about here briefly today. But Butch, what most people don't know, the dinner, which is an understatement, we really know it's an experience. But some things precede the dinner. We had an excellent conversation with young people on the Saturday before the dinner, and we also had an awesome jobs experience. But Butch, tell us a little bit about our Stops and Cops forum that we held with the young people in the city of Detroit.
Well, first of all, congratulations again on such a great dinner. It's just the buzz, not just here in this community, but nationally. It was just a great dinner. And the Saturday policy conference before the dinner was just a big hit, and part of it was the Stops and Cops program that we had. And essentially what that is, you know, after the Trayvon Martin march, we wanted to figure out how can we make our kids safer on the streets, give them some tips and tools for how they should handle themselves for street encounters, not just with people who are community patrols, but also with the police. So we ended up putting together a program with Youthville, the NAACP Youth Council, so real students, real cops, real judges, real defense lawyers, role-playing police interactions. So we entered into partnerships with law enforcement. We actually brought a police car into the room at Cobo.
Now you're talking a real-life car.
A real-life car. You know, not a toy car where they're simulating whatever, you know, with all the sirens and the lights, you know, and young people like that anyway, and you know, it makes an impression. And then our friends at Avis Ford gave us a cherry red Mustang convertible.
Beautiful car.
It was a beautiful car, and all the kids wanted to get into it, you know, afterwards. So we put that in front of the police car in the room on the stage. Then to the right of the stage, we had judges. So, you know, like our friend Judge Edward Ewell, and we had defense lawyers like Susan Reed, super defense lawyer. We had criminal justice experts. We had Sheriff Benny Napoleon and the police chief and law enforcement from all over the region. And 300 kids in the audience. And so we went to Youthville and some of these other places, and they all had roles. So we had scripts. So they would get into, in scene number one, they would get into the car, and let's say they were all texting. So we called that episode SMS.
Gotcha.
And they were all texting, you know, and not paying attention to the road. We had a camera inside the police car. Police car sees them swerving, hypothetically. He gets on the radio. You hear him, how he gets on the radio. You know, dispatch, you know, car, you know, weaving in between lanes. They don't hear that. They're texting. He pulls them over, lights go on, sirens go on, and in the audience, you know, the kids are kind of backing up, and he pulls over, and they're not paying any attention to him by design. They're still on their phones. They're still texting, whatever, and he makes them get out. Then we have the audience vote. How did they do? Because we need, particularly with young people, that interaction. So we had them vote pass or fail. And
that was an excellent interactive component, I think, that was added in. That was excellent.
Thank you. They loved it.
And there was three major components, Butch, and I know we'll take a break here shortly, but some of the takeaways, particularly you had the students who, and from your perspective, what do you think the students took away? You also had the involvement of law enforcement, because I think it's a two-way street. We have expectations when we're pulled over, just like law enforcement has expectations when they pull someone over. And much like your judges and your defense counsels that were present have expectations when individuals come before them, what do you think each one of those components took away from that Saturday event?
I think from the students, one, it was enjoyable for them, and they learned something about the criminal justice system. But I think more than anything, I think what they came away from is don't front an officer on the street, because you're not going to win that battle. If you feel that something's gone on wrong and you don't like how you've been treated, we've given you tips, respectful tips on how to handle yourselves. And afterwards, you can get a lawyer. You can call the NAACP. But if you try to get into it with a police officer, you're not going to win that. Understand your rights. Be respectful, and I think that was the biggest takeaway from them. Law enforcement that were there, I think that was a wake-up call there for them too, because it says that, you know, when you stop somebody, you do need probable cause, and they do have rights that have to be respected. That's why we put the back Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment. Fourth Amendment, right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. Fifth Amendment, they have a right not to say, did you know that you were speeding?
Right.
They don't have to say, yes, I know I was speeding. You know, they can be respectful and say, I'm sorry, you're upset, officer, without admitting anything. And the Sixth Amendment, the right to assistance of counsel. You have constitutional rights.
Absolutely.
Police officers need to know that, and I think they got that at that. And I think it was valuable for them to see that there is more education that's needed to be done on how they interact with the public and how the public interacts with them. There's got to be a higher level of trust if people are to, you know, to really move forward. So I think that they were very much impacted by that. Even the judges that participated in it, you know, I think it was good for them to see this is what's going on in the streets. I see it in my courtroom, but now I see it live and in living color in front of me. So I think it was an educational, great takeaway moment for everybody that participated in it. I have to say, you know, right before that, we did a forum called "America's Addiction to Incarceration."
That's right.
And it was a, you know, blue ribbon panel, you know, with Jeff Garrett
High power.
Jeff Garrett from the Free Press was our moderator. The United States Attorney Barbara McQuaid, Police Chief Godby was there. We had judges from the Oakland County, you know, Keith from Flip the Script, other talking about we have the highest incarceration rate in the nation in Michigan. And things came up such as you get 4 years under our system for armed robbery, but you get 14 years for passing a bad check. And our prisons have swollen and swollen and swollen, and yet we're probably not safer. So what are we doing? And so it was a good dialogue that fit in almost perfectly from the earlier stops and cops issues, you know. So the NAACP is weighing in heavily on these issues as a policy matter here at the Detroit branch. And more, this is going to be a big part of our focus with the Thurgood Marshall Social Justice Advocacy Project, which was a co-sponsor of this with the young persons component, as well as our law committee and other legal redress committee. So it was a great experience.
Sure, and that was an awesome day, and also U.S. Attorney Eric Holder touched on that, America's addiction to incarceration, and we all know Attorney Holder was our keynote speaker for the Freedom Fund dinner. And after we come back from this short break, we're going to talk about the Freedom Fund dinner, its experience. There were a lot of magic moments, as you know, Butch. It was an exciting experience.
It was.
I'm just as excited to get it over as I was to participate. But
a lot of work.
A lot of work.
But we pulled it off.
But well worth it. So stay tuned. You're watching Let the Record Reflect with the Detroit branch in AACP. Welcome back to Let the Record Reflect with the Detroit branch in AACP. My name is Donnell White, your Executive Director, standing in on behalf of our President, the Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony. Today I'm joined with our General Counsel, Attorney Melvin Butch Hollowell. Butch, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're having some great conversations about the weekend before the dinner. You talked about the Stops and Cops workshop with our young people and the forum on America's addiction to incarceration. That was on Saturday, and also on Friday we had our Jobs, our Super Career Expo. where the Detroit branch NAACP for the past 9 years have matched potential with opportunity in bringing the employers to the potential employees together, hosting workshops for the returning citizens, how to dress for success, applying for jobs online. So the dinner is much more than a dinner. I think it's where we started this conversation. It's become larger than life, and most people don't know, but we're the third largest event at Cobo Hall.
Well, that's amazing. And it really, in many respects, it is the iconic event of the city of Detroit. I mean, just the logistics. I chaired the dinner in 1995 when we gave that Lifetime Achievement Award to Mayor Coleman Young, and just the number of volunteers. I think we had 2,000-3,000 volunteers. It's an army. It's just feeding hot chicken to 10,000
people. Is a hard thing to do. I mean, it's hard. There's a lot that gets involved, but the issues that we get into.
I had a chance to shake hands with the Attorney General and compliment him on talking about, as you said, these criminal justice issues. And he touched on those issues, I think, in a powerful way. We were saying, we in the United States have 5% of the world's population.
Right.
But we in the United States have 23% of the prison population.
Right.
And we're spending $38,000
a year to incarcerate an individual, and we're spending, $7,500 per student to educate them? And as we see the money being siphoned off from public education, particularly here in Michigan, where we spend less on higher education than any other state, dead last. We're at the very bottom as it relates to K through 12 spending. So it isn't the question that we have the money. We have the money. We're just choosing to spend it on the wrong thing. We're spending it on prisons at the expense of public education. So Attorney General Holder was, I thought he was great on that point.
And timely. His visit was so timely. With the myriad of issues we're looking at in the state of Michigan, when we're looking at the issues of this ballot referendum with Public Act 4, it's in the courts now. They're saying, hey, your signatures were no good. This font size classification, and we've had some new developments even on that very issue.
We were in the Court of Appeals last week in front of a 3-judge panel because the State Board of Canvassers, even though 226,000 signatures were filed with the state to have people, give them the right to vote on whether or not this emergency financial manager law should be repealed. And this law takes away elected officials, mostly in communities of color. In fact, to this point, only in communities of color. And replaces them with unelected officials that take away collective bargaining rights and contracting rights and all the budgets and all that stuff. Our remedy under the Constitution, when we don't like how certain elected officials are acting, is to unelect them. It isn't to replace them with a state-appointed manager. So we, 250,000 Michiganders signed those petitions in front of the State Board of Canvassers. They deadlocked 2-2, saying that they were not going to put it on the ballot, and it was voted right along party lines. The 2 Republicans voted not to put it on the ballot. The 2 Democrats voted for it, and they clearly breached their legal duty to put it on, saying that they had a concern with the size of the heading on the petition. Even though the petition was absolutely correct in every respect, what the development was, after oral arguments last week, was that the state's own expert witness, Professor Cornell from Michigan State University, we've discovered he advised them before the hearing that the petition was correct. They did have the right amount of type. They suppressed his testimony. They didn't let it get into the record. But once he saw the vote, he had a crisis of conscience. He said, I can't stand mute anymore on this. He went public. We got his testimony. We put that in front of the Court of Appeals, which frankly was very uncomfortable. That we were calling them on their game.
That's right.
And so now
we're fighting that issue. We're waiting for the Court of Appeals to rule. The lawyers are working on putting together, objections, and there's no question this is going to end up into the Michigan Supreme Court. It's probably going to end up in the federal courts. But we've got a sterling legal team that's working very hard on this. So this is a voting rights issue. It's an equal protection issue. It's an issue of due process.
And I end this segment on how we began, and I certainly thank you to our viewers, because without them and the members who come to this dinner, it certainly would not be possible. We merely provide the venue, and I think the engine behind the success of this dinner is really the people, the community that supports it, the Freedom Fund Dinner Committee who sells the tickets, our sponsors, and a big thank you to DTE Energy, our senior corporate chair, the Coca-Cola Company, General Motors, UAW, as well as Rhonda Pugh and Hiram Jackson, who served as our co-chairs this year. We had an awesome, we talked about awardees, but we also had an all-star sponsor cast this year as well, who really stepped up when many organizations and companies are stepping back and saying, we're broke, we don't have the money. They really stepped up and believed in the work that's needed by the organization. So we say thank you to our sponsors, but again, most importantly, thank you to our viewers and the supporters of the NAACP. Now, the dinner is but one celebration, but the important part is the Fight for Freedom Fund. That's how we raise money for the important issues that we care about. We just finished our Allies Issues in Action meeting, where we had Congressman John Conyers and Congressman Hanson Clark talking about some important issues within the community. One of the issues that were brought up was the issue of transportation, and we know that's an important issue. We've been grinding that axe for many years here in the city of Detroit, and particularly at the NAACP. So coming up next, in our next segment, we'll be joined with Ms. Ruth Johnson from Transportation Riders United. We're having a great conversation about transportation, so stay tuned. You're watching Let the Record Reflect. Welcome back to the Detroit branch NAACP's Let the Record Reflect. My name is Donnell White, your Executive Director, standing in on behalf of our President, the Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony. We just had an excellent conversation recapping the Fight for Freedom Fund dinner experience and how that dinner supports the efforts and the advocacy work of the organization. We just come out of our Allies Issues in Action meeting, where we had a presentation from Congressman John Conyers and both Hanson Clark. Joining me to recap some of that conversation is Ms. Ruth Johnson of Transportation Riders United, Detroit's transit advocate. Welcome to the show, Ruth.
Thank you for this opportunity to talk about transit.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, we just got finished hearing from Congressman John Conyers and Congressman Hanson Clark, who talked about a myriad of issues, but also talked about the need for jobs in this region, particularly in the city of Detroit, and also how transportation plays a major role in the connection in that. So I heard you reference something, Ruth. I believe you called it the gospel of transit.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. What is the gospel of transit?
Well, when I use that phrase, what I talk about is that transit provides a way for people to access opportunity, whether it's to employment, job training, to health care, to cultural and artistic opportunities, all opportunities so that we can all be, regardless where we live, our age or stage of life, full participants in our great community.
And now, we talked about this issue of transportation. Now, for those who ride the bus lines, to those who have vehicles and pay an exorbitant amount of cost, transportation has been an issue for this region. In your view, and particularly from the lens of Transportation Riders United, what are some of the barriers that we're up against to a regional transportation that is brick and mortar, tangible, not just conversation, ideology about transportation and how it should work, but what are some of the barriers that's preventing